Trade efficiency with NACFI's Mike Roth and friends.
Here in episode 38, we're joined by Avra Brahma, principal engineer at Locomation, where he shares his thoughts on human-guided autonomy and explains why it is the most practical short-term approach. He also talks about autonomous convoys, why automated vehicles are a feasible near-term opportunity to reduce emissions and improve the quality of life for drivers. We also discuss the challenges of reliability and robustness of automated vehicles and how they'll merge with a variety of powertrain options. Today we have joining us Avra Brahma. He's a principal engineer at Locomation. Thanks for joining us today, Avra.
You're welcome, Mike. Thanks for having me here.
As we get started, I always ask my guests, because this podcast is named Mike Roth and Friends. I mean, how did we come to know each other, Avra? And do you remember?
Yeah, I think physically we must have run into each other the first time at the NACFI workshop in Indy that you guys had. The IMS event that you guys sponsored. I really enjoyed the event and the IMS. So that was a great event to be part of. But I have been following your work a little bit earlier than that, actually. So, your confidence reports, the NACFI work. So that's been really good.
Yeah, I get that. We're starting to get that. We've been at it 12 years. So there's a bit of a, we've had a reach, and it's always rewarding to hear people, caring about what we're saying and getting into it. I mean, what did you think about the workshop we did and the, we actually stayed around for the IMS autonomous car race? I mean, what did you think of that? NACFI's got a bit of a reputation for having workshops in cool places. Did we live up to it in your mind?
Oh, totally, completely. And that was a good opportunity you guys made use of. We should do more of that. And, even the workshop, you invited a very good, well-rounded set of people. You had a very good audience. So it was very, very, it was both ways, right? Learned a lot, maybe said something that other people learned something from it. And, and plus the IMS event was a bonus, right? So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's, and it's kind of how we do the work at NACFI. We learn something, we talk about it, and we talk about it in a place, hopefully, where, we've got other experts and, key leaders, or, there, whether it's at an industry event or a workshop like we did in Indianapolis. And then we learn something, and it's just like a constant 360 degree. I guess that's how learning and in the real world sort of really takes place. So, but Ivor, let's step back a minute. I mean, I was prepping for this a little bit, and I looked back over some of your career, and I think you and I have a lot in common. I mean, when I look at our passion for alternative energy technologies, and you had time at Cummins, I had time at Cummins, and then we're both engineering graduates at Ohio State. I've got a little bachelor's degree, and I think you even have a PhD. So, you top me there. But walk us through your career. Kind of what excites you about what you've been doing that leads you to what you're doing today for Locomation and the trucking industry.
Great question, Mike. So yeah, first of all, go Bucks, right? Always happy to meet another Buckeye. And so, like you said, I spent about 10 years at Cummins. Before that, I had to spend about 7 years at Ford. And I started out actually working, my first job, right, in the industry was really working on some regeneration, DPF regeneration controls. So I started off with particulate matter mitigation, and always I chuckle nowadays when folks say, "Oh, there's dirty stuff coming out of diesels," and I always think, no, that stopped since 2010 probably, right? So worked on that, and as my career progressed, as I moved more towards NOx mitigation, I worked on SCRs. And last few years, I was actually working on some cold start NOx mitigation together with efficiency improvements, GHG, for the CARB low NOx rules. So so that was very interesting work. But so that was very good. And there's a lot happening in powertrain right now. Even now, there's a lot happening in powertrain, engines, emissions, everything. My interest was moving more a little bit towards system level. So, and AVs, automated vehicles, are a mega trend in mobility. So I wanted to extend and apply my expertise to that area as well. And when I started looking at different companies, Locomation's model was the most closely aligned with the way I thought that the technology should or could get deployed. I mean, that was the, human guided or with a human in the loop. And we can talk a little more later about this. But that was most closely aligned with my view of how the technology deploys in practice. And so that was a natural choice for me for, a new job, basically.
I didn't realize your particulate matter and NOx work, so I may call you on a few other questions around that for the future. But yeah, so I too have been intrigued with Locomation's view and of how this will emerge. Let's say, I mean, as you think about new technology, some some people and even in truck automation, there's some that look for well, let's call it revolution instead of evolution, right? Some will jump to a a more significant different state than what we currently have, and others will look at more of an evolution. And even when I first started thinking about was introduced to platooning and thinking about, could we take this safety equipment that we called it into actually driving trucks, an automated world. I had that first thought too. I mean, I was like, well, if there's this huge savings and this huge stuff for, trucks being driven completely without a driver, could we just jump to it? Or are there, sort of little bridges, or that's probably the wrong term, but steps along the way that this could be in a more emerging one? And I would definitely, I mean, tell us exactly about Locomation's view of how this will occur and what you and the company are driving there. Because many of us have seen, Seaton talk about it and others, but walk us through Locomation's view on automation and the nature of how this is going to take place.
Yeah, so basically, our founders, like you mentioned, Chetan, right? They have a very deep history on autonomy, and they were part of automating a Caterpillar heavy hauler. Probably you might have heard that was one of the earliest commercial applications. So heavy duty with all its opportunities appeared to be normal fit for their background and experience. And the way they have brought it in is excellent. I mean, I think there's a lot of energy in this company. The whole idea is that it's evolutionary, obviously, like you said, and it's human guided autonomy is our mantra right now. And that is, we feel that the most practical approach in many different ways, from a multitude of different ways to bring autonomy to fruition. And, there are so many different aspects, right? You've got to look at the technical aspect, obviously, right? That's the first, one, as an engineer, that's the first thing that comes to my mind. But then there's regulatory aspects, there's operational aspects, there's the human factors aspect. And from all of these aspects, our model is sitting in kind of a very sweet spot, that kind of is at the intersection of many of these aspects and seems to answer a lot of these questions simultaneously. So the way we are progressing is we would, start off with what we call the human guided autonomy, or a product is commercially named ARC, or autonomous relay convoy system, with a couple of other supporting systems, the autonomous relay network and our freight optimization framework. So these are, they all work together, and they will basically, that's how we'll pull it in. Now, eventually we may get to, I'm sure there's a roadmap to get to full autonomy in the future, but the learnings that we get during this time will be key to have a very successful, fully autonomous solution. And even if we have a fully when, it's not if, it's when, there's no reason why it couldn't be a fully autonomous convoy, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be a solo truck.
Yeah.
So
I'm reminded of one of the run on less electric fleets last summer when we were interviewing them. Said, when the wheels are turning, that's when we're learning. He said, So this concept of I like it makes sense to me, this human guided autonomy, because we're taking advantage of the technology, but we're learning and using humans wherever possible. So this first phase, this ARC, I mean, for me, it's helped think about it in terms of you're also exploiting, two practices in the industry that are, not as common, but really do help efficiency, and that is team driving
Mhm.
and slip seating. So, in team driving, at two drivers, one truck, and a driver sleeps while the other driver drives, and you can basically get double the miles out of the truck. And then in slip seating, the concept is that or sometimes called dual utilization, one driver drives a shift, he gets out of the truck, or she, and another driver gets in and drives it to get the same sort of high miles. And so the concept here, in simple terms, right, is that you've got two trucks platooning, and when appropriate, or when it's deemed approved and ready to go, that second driver of the following truck is resting, right? That's kind of the, and so that gains a lot of benefits, cost and fuel and et cetera. Do I have that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can get into a little more detail on that, but just at a very high level, the idea is that, when the convoy, so we prefer convoy, and when the convoy is formed, after the convoy is formed, the rear driver, basically the following driver, takes rest, and basically that's their HOS mandated rest time. And by doing so, what's happening is there's two things that's happening. One is they're not, right now, drivers don't get paid for detention time. So they're making money while they're sleeping. That's one, right? And B, the fleets are making money because that truck's driving. So that, and now when the lead driver feels tired, takes a break, or is required by the regulations to stop and rest, they would swap roles. The following driver would then take over and basically complete the rest of the mission. So basically, there was this great graphic I saw either from you or Rick, I don't remember, but we kind of mangled it a little bit. But the graphic was basically, we get about 22 hours of runtime. If you were just looking at a solo truck, they would just get about 11 hours, because that they have to stop. A conventional truck, they would have to stop. So we get 22 hours per truck of runtime, because then both are running continuously.
Yeah. Yeah, really interesting. I think in this, learning and, kind of crawling, walking, and running, this is a crawling for like the long haul. And then, of course, there's automation. We probably won't have time to get into it here, but there's automation in all kinds of areas, with slow speed automation, backing into docks, all sorts of things. But, starting with the highway driving and so forth. And, I ask this form of question of probably all of the product development people in automation, but sometimes I open a magazine and I see automation, and I'm like, really, why are we wasting our time on this? Self-driving trucks, you got to be joking. I mean, but I've learned to appreciate, and I get the technology, but walk us through, I mean, what do you see there as you start to talk to fleets and OEMs and governments and even the public about self-driving trucks? Because I'm a little shocked, to be honest with you, Avra, that we're moving as fast as we are, given what we're talking about here. Big trucks, high speeds. Kind of what's the current perception out there, and and what's going on?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about here, actually. So let's start with the fleets, right? So you're probably more aware of this than I am, that driver shortages, cost, equipment utilization, right? Common issues right now with the fleets. So our goal is to alleviate a lot of these issues in freight trucking, and some of the recent studies by CTA, you talked about the public, right? So recent studies by CTA has shown that the customer sentiment is actually very favorable to automated freight trucking. Actually, it's more so, and not only more so, our model is actually more favorable to the public than some of our competitors' model. So they favor human guided or human involved autonomy as being much more favorable from that standpoint. So that's what's happening in terms of, fleets are looking at solutions to, obviously shortage. And you said something about speed. I think there's a bit of urgency here, not just from, obviously folks want to make money ASAP, right? I mean, we need to get these supply chain things ironed out. But there's also the urgency from an emission standpoint. And the urgency, people want to get real results by 2030, become net zero by 2050, I mean, all of these things that's happening. And I mean, AVs, and especially our model is actually, and I can talk a little more about this, is a very feasible near-term alternative to reducing emissions. So that really impacts the shippers. And I mean, I could go on and on, or if you want to talk about it, basically from the shipper standpoint, they are under increasing pressure to be sustainable and reduce emissions. Now, if you look at their, business model, the only realistic place they could potentially right away chip away at it is their scope 3, which is their indirect emissions. And where does that come from? It comes from their, carriers, the fleets, and what technologies their fleets are using. And that's where we are presenting ourselves as a very realistic solution. So, as an industry first, we sponsored an independent science-based data-driven study of our environmental impact. And that report was released recently, and I can point you to it. It's on our website, locomation.ai. The study was performed by a firm called Boundless Analytics, which is pretty leading firm in terms of these ESG analytic studies. And it basically confirmed that our benefits, such as a significant reduction in our GHG footprint, our fuel consumption, equipment utilization, and a reduction in operating cost. And from the driver standpoint, which is I call the S aspect of the ESG, the more I learn about what current drivers have to face, I think this is a great opportunity to use this technology as an opportunity to improve the quality of life for the drivers. It's a great opportunity to reset the norms and expectations for the drivers.
Yeah, we at NACFE, we reviewed that report. On, the key fuel aspect of that is, pairing these tractors up and gaining the fuel economy benefit of platooning, and then also the lack of idling. So keeping these trucks moving, and basically, there's lots of ways that I've been thinking about describing this. Basically, in a simple terms, one of the two trucks is moving and hauling freight, and rather than sitting in a truck stop, where a driver's just sitting there, and the freight's not doing anything. So, there's probably some, shippers and freight and third-party logistics changes that need to be made to take advantage of it. But yeah, we reviewed that report, and I'm glad you brought it up. What are some of the key so the public's more interested maybe than I was characterizing it, and I should change my own opinions here, and if I have one, and then the manufacturers and governments and so forth. So if there's this movement going forward, what's holding us back? I mean, what are some of the barriers, Avra? What are some of the keys to progressing this more quickly?
So, I mean, my answer is Locomation, right? I mean, obviously, because we are, I think, doing this the fastest that can be done. And, but from another standpoint, there are a couple of, like I said, so being in the, you've been around trucks, and, heavy duty vehicles have a much bigger useful life than passenger cars, right? And so there are some technical challenges to overcome, right? Obviously, of reliability and robustness. And, if NOx sensors have to last so many hours in those harsh environments. And so do LiDARs. And, maybe the environment isn't as harsh for the LiDAR as it is for the NOx sensor because it's sitting in an exhaust pipe. But yeah, it could be, right? It'll snow, it'll rain, right? So all of these, the variations that you see in your sensing environment, all of these traditional engineering problems are still challenges. So longevity, right, reliability, these will have to be resolved slowly, or quickly rather, I would say. But till you get stuff out there, you won't be able to actually even know what the problems are to a certain extent. You can only anticipate what the problems are. There are some challenges from maybe a regulatory standpoint, especially for our competitors, I think, where if the driver has to go out and in the case of if they have to stop and put out the current rules, like you have to put out a warning sign. I mean, how are they going to do that without a driver, right? But
Yep.
Locomation has the answers because we have our driver. So that's not a challenge for us.
Yeah, and I think again, I think this is a really interesting and sort of in your face example of emerging technologies, or evolving is the term I used earlier, where some of the you mitigate some of these issues. And so we see a lot of these early demonstrations in the Texas, Arizona, New Mexico area. Makes total sense, right? You got weather, you got topography advantages, lack of a lot of traffic and congestion, and with the 2-driver model, and you learn and you learn and you learn and you keep just developing that. We both said we had a little reliability experience in our backgrounds. That reliability growth, they call it, right? That increasing confidence through applications that are maybe more or easier on, or more in line with the technology. Do those first, learn, change the product, improve the product, cost reduce, weight reduce, improve performance, and then do it again and just keep doing it and expanding the applications. That really seems like how this is going to evolve.
Absolutely. And I mean, you should come in to us and give us just exactly what you said. We'll be happy to hear those words again. So
how does this fit with a few other things going on in the industry? I mean, do you guys sit around and think about how this will merge with electrification or hydrogen fuel cells, or other, let's just call it maybe powertrain technologies to simplify it? I mean, does that matter or not?
Yeah, we get this asked this question a lot, and our answer, at least my answer, is our technology. The beauty of that is it's completely powertrain agnostic, so it sits on top of a powertrain. So I mean, whatever benefits you get with diesels, you will get a lot of that with electrification or with hydrogen fuel cells, right? So whatever becomes eventually in the industry the main trend in the industry eventually. So we don't feel threatened by that at all. In fact, it's very compatible with any powertrain technology that comes on. And the other thing you got to think about is they don't necessarily, any of these technologies that you mentioned, they don't necessarily have to compete also, because there's a sweet spot for every technology in the whole marketplace. And they, just because you've got a bunch of everything coming up at the same time doesn't mean they have to all be on the same thing. They could be at different things and working together. So you just have to be smart enough to understand what the sweet spot for each technology is and make them work together.
One of the things that we like in trucking is to unbundle stuff, right? So allow features to, be spec'd, and that allows us to spec trucks for this wide variety of uses, whether it's vocational or over the road, et cetera. And so only bundling things if it's actually required, is key to trucking success, I think. So I think you're right on there. And we've thought about this some too. I mean, I think there is some operational 1 + 1 might equal 3 when we think about charging and automation or fueling and automation and so forth. But some of that's a little farther down the road. Let's just get these technologies moving now.
Right. And again, if you think of the first mile, last mile, middle mile piece, I mean, not everything has to be the same, right? I mean, something might be well suited for a first mile solution, whereas something else is better suited for a middle mile solution, right? And which is basically our sweet spot. Right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So here's my killer closing question for you. So are you ready?
Yep.
For a guy that was in the weeds on NOx and PM and all of that, and now, on diesel exhaust, that seems to be a very, focused, detailed bunch of work that you did for a number of years. And now for, months or a short time here, looking at these total vehicle fleet operational pieces and so forth. So what do you think we should be doing now on automation that we'll look back on and say, man, I'm sure glad we did that in 21 or 2022 because that moved us along quicker.
One of the things in my mind that we should be doing is more rigor. I mean, because, there's a push to make development trends smaller, obviously, and we want that. But there's a reason why, development cycles were 3 to 5 years in the industry, right? And so there's a lot of safety involved. So somehow that one of the ways that things that AV should be doing industry is figuring out how can you achieve the same level of rigor in a shorter time. So that's one thing. And from, then also educating the public, that's where NACFE comes in big time, right? I mean, with your studies and the confidence reports and all of that, you play a huge role in educating the public, the customers, and the general stakeholders, right? Everyone.
We did a report a few years ago. We called defining production, and it does talk to your first point there about reliability growth and knowing when to stop testing and go formally into production. What does a series production of a truck mean? And there is a lot of pressure to do it faster, and with that, a lot of risk in getting things wrong. Hey, really great conversation, Avra. We got into some things that I've been wanting to talk about around truck automation. So really appreciate you joining me, and thanks for doing so.
Absolutely, Mike.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Rothenfranks.